You think you are a good person. Most people do. But thinking it and being it are not the same thing. And the gap between them is where most people spend their entire lives. Welcome to the Stoic Compass. I am EPICTETUS, and today I am joined by JUNG and LAOZI. Today we are examining what are the marks of genuine goodness, and how do you know if you have them? Here is what I have noticed. People who are genuinely good rarely talk about it. They do not describe themselves as kind or fair or honest. They simply act. The person who spends energy announcing their virtue is almost always managing a reputation, not living a life. And managing a reputation is not goodness. It is performance. The question worth asking is not whether you think you are good. The question is what you do when nobody is watching and there is nothing to gain.
I would not dismiss the performance so quickly. What you are calling performance, I would call compensation. People who announce their goodness loudly are often not lying, exactly. They are trying to become what they cannot quite reach. The persona, as I think of it, is the face we construct for the world. And the energy put into that construction tells us something. It tells us what the person is afraid they are not.
You are both looking at the wrong thing. Whether someone announces their goodness or hides it quietly, neither of those is the mark. The mark is whether goodness moves through them without effort, not because they are disciplined, and not because they have resolved their darkness, because they are not fighting against the grain of what they are.
That is a beautiful way to avoid a hard truth. Without effort sounds like freedom, but in practice, it means nothing to the person standing in front of a choice. You are hungry, someone else has less food, and you have a decision to make. There is no flowing, there is only what you do. And what you do in that moment is the only honest answer to the question of whether you are good.
But why does the person make that choice? That is the question you are skipping. Two people can give away the same piece of bread. One does it because they have genuinely worked through their own hunger and fear. The other does it to feel superior or to avoid guilt or because someone is watching. The action is identical, the goodness is not.
So you are saying the interior matters more than the act?
I am saying the interior is the act in the deepest sense. The outer gesture is the last thing that happens. What drives it, that is where you would find the truth. And most people do not look there. They feel the impulse, they act on it, they call it goodness, and they never ask what the impulse was made of.
And I am saying that this kind of inquiry can become its own trap. You can spend a lifetime examining your motivations and never get to the bread. The person in front of you is hungry now. The examination is a luxury. At some point, the only evidence of character is the accumulation of choices made under pressure. That is what goodness is. Not a feeling, not a hidden truth, but a pattern of behavior you can point to.
You are both assuming goodness is something a person builds or discovers, but perhaps it is something they either obstruct or do not obstruct. The question is not what goodness looks like. The question is what gets in the way of it.
Name one thing that gets in the way.
The need to prove it.
That is closer to the truth than either of you may want to admit. The shadow, what we bury because we cannot face it, does not disappear. It comes back through the side door. The person who is most vocal about injustice is often carrying a great deal of unprocessed rage that has nothing to do with justice. The person who is most consistently generous may be running from a deep terror of being seen as selfish. I'm not saying the actions are worthless. I am saying you cannot fully understand goodness in a person without understanding what they're compensating for.
Then what is your test? If every act of goodness can be reinterpreted as compensation, how do you ever know anything? You have made goodness impossible to locate.
No, I have made it harder to fake. That is not the same thing. A person who has genuinely done the work, who has looked at their shadow honestly, who has stopped blaming others for what belongs to them, that person's goodness has a different quality. It does not need an audience. It does not collapse when it is not rewarded. It is quieter and more consistent, and it does not ask anything back.
That is the closest either of you has come to it. The goodness that asks something back is not goodness. It is a transaction.
We agree on that. The disagreement is about what you do with that knowledge. Jung says look inward, examine the roots. I say stop examining and start acting correctly and repeatedly until the action becomes who you are. What is the practical difference?
The practical difference is that Epictetus's approach can produce people who behave well without understanding themselves. And those people are one significant loss, one failure, one humiliation away from behaving very differently. Because the behavior is not grounded in self-knowledge, it is grounded in will, and will is not infinite.
Will can be trained. What you are describing as self-knowledge can become self-indulgence. I have seen that failure too.
You are both describing the same person from different angles. The person who acts well without understanding and the person who understands without acting, they are equally lost. Neither of them is what we are looking for.
Then tell me what we are looking for plainly.
Someone in whom the knowing and the doing are the same thing. They do not act and then reflect. They do not reflect and then act. It moves together. That is the only mark I trust.
I accept that as a description. But how does a person get there? That is the question your tradition tends to leave unanswered. You describe the destination without the path.
Every path someone draws for you is the wrong path. Not because paths do not exist, but because the drawing pulls your attention away from where you already are.
That is a useful thing to say and a difficult thing to live by. Most people need something more specific than attend to where you are. They need to be told, here is a situation. Here is what goodness looks like inside it. Here is what to do.
Perhaps, but telling people what to do has an upper limit. It reaches the edge of the ego's willingness to comply, and then it stops. What gets past that edge is not instruction, it is insight. A person who has genuinely seen something in themselves, really seen it, not just thought about it, changes in a way that instruction cannot produce.
And yet insight can be performed too. People mistake an emotional experience for actual change. They feel something open, and they believe they have become different. 3 weeks later, they are the same.
You are right. That is exactly why the work is slow. A single insight is a flash of light. It shows you the room you're in, but you still have to furnish the room yourself.
Let me say something neither of you has said. Goodness is not a state you arrive at. It is not a thing you discover in yourself. It is a direction. Either you are moving toward it or you are moving away from it. The person who thinks they have arrived, who says, I am a good person, as if it is a permanent condition, that person has stopped moving. And stopped moving is how goodness dies. You have to keep choosing it. Every day in situations that are not designed to showcase your character. In the boring ones, the inconvenient ones, the ones where no one will remember what you did.
I do not disagree with the direction, but I would add that the direction changes as you change. What goodness looks like at 40 is not what it looked like at 20, and the person who does not revisit the question, who just keeps performing the same set of good behaviors without ever asking whether those behaviors are still the right ones, that person can become rigid, or worse, they can become self-righteous.
Self-righteousness is the shadow of goodness. It is what goodness becomes when it forgets it is still becoming.
That is the truest thing said today.
Do not congratulate me. Ask yourself whether you are free of it.
I am not, but I know the test. When I'm irritated by someone else's failure to be good, that irritation is almost always pointing back at me. When I am genuinely good, I do not have time to be irritated by others. I am too occupied with my own conduct.
That is a genuine mark. The moralist who cannot look away from other people's failures is always defending against something in himself. The person who is quietly doing the work does not need the contrast.
Here is the one thing I would say clearly. You cannot know your own goodness the way you know a fact. You can only watch. Watch what you do when it costs you something. Watch what you do when no story about yourself is at stake. Watch long enough and a pattern appears. The pattern is the answer.
All of this argument, and we have not yet said the one thing the listener can actually use. Most people approach goodness the wrong way. They ask, am I a good person? That question is almost useless. It invites self-flattery. It lets you audit the highlights and skip the rest. The better question is, what do I do when it costs me something? Not when it is easy, not when someone is watching, not when the good act makes you feel good about yourself. What do you do when generosity is inconvenient, when honesty will make someone dislike you, when fairness requires you to give up something you wanted? That is where goodness lives or dies, not in intention, not in self-image, in the actual choice, under actual pressure. Here is the other mark. Genuine goodness does not need the other person to notice. If your kindness collapses the moment it goes unacknowledged, it was not kindness. It was a bid for approval. Real goodness is indifferent to the reception. It is not cold. It is free. You did what was right because it was right. That is the whole of it. You do not arrive at goodness. You keep choosing it. Every choice either reinforces the direction or erodes it. There is no neutral ground. Today, try this. Before the day is over, find one moment where you can do something right that costs you something small, time, comfort, acknowledgement, and do it without telling anyone, including yourself a flattering story about it afterward. Just do it and move on. That is the practice, not the grand gesture, the small, quiet, unwitnessed one. Do it enough times and you will stop needing to ask whether you are good. The person who has to ask whether they are good has already started looking in the wrong direction. Look at your choices. Look at the pattern they make over time. That pattern is your answer. It does not care what you think of yourself. Neither does anyone you have actually helped or failed to help when it mattered. Go do something that costs you something. Do it quietly. Do it again tomorrow. If today's conversation has served you, take it further. Pay Attention by C. Trebu, 12 Lessons in the Practice of Seeing Clearly. Available now on Amazon.